In a small village nestled between the lush green hills of India, there lived a young man named Arjun. From a very young age, Arjun was curious about the mysteries of life. He often found himself gazing at the stars, wondering about the nature of existence and what lies beyond the material world. His parents were devout Hindus, and they taught him about the gods and goddesses, the rituals, and the festivals that filled their lives with meaning and color. As Arjun grew older, his curiosity turned into a burning desire to understand the deeper truths of life. He had heard of a wandering Buddhist monk who had recently taken residence in a small hut at the edge of the village. The monk, known as Bhikkhu Ananda, was said to be wise beyond his years, and villagers often sought his counsel. Intrigued by what he had heard, Arjun decided to visit the monk to learn more about Buddhism, a religion that seemed both familiar and foreign to him. One misty morning, Arjun made his way to Bhikkhu Ananda's hut. The monk was seated outside, meditating under a large banyan tree. His presence was serene, and a sense of calm seemed to radiate from him. "Namaste, Bhikkhu Ananda," Arjun greeted, bowing respectfully. The monk opened his eyes and smiled warmly. "Namaste, young seeker. What brings you to my humble abode?" Arjun hesitated for a moment, then spoke. "I've come to learn, Bhikkhu. My parents are Hindus, and I have been raised in that tradition. But I am eager to understand more about Buddhism. I wish to know how it is different and yet similar to what I have known all my life." Bhikkhu Ananda nodded, his eyes twinkling with understanding. "You seek the truth, and that is a noble path. Sit with me, and let us explore these ancient teachings together." Arjun sat down on the grass, and Bhikkhu Ananda began to speak, his voice gentle and melodic. He told Arjun about the life of Siddhartha Gautama, the prince who renounced his kingdom in search of enlightenment. He explained the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, and the concept of anatta, or non-self. Arjun listened intently, absorbing every word. As the day passed, Arjun asked many questions. "In Hinduism," he said, "we believe in the Atman, the eternal self, which is one with Brahman, the ultimate reality. But in Buddhism, you speak of anatta, the absence of a permanent self. How can these two ideas coexist?" Bhikkhu Ananda smiled. "Both paths lead to liberation, but they take different routes. Hinduism teaches that by realizing the unity of Atman and Brahman, one can attain moksha, freedom from the cycle of rebirth. In Buddhism, we see the self as an illusion, a collection of changing phenomena. By understanding this, we can let go of attachment and achieve nirvana, the cessation of suffering." Arjun nodded, pondering the monk's words. "And what of the gods?" he asked. "In Hinduism, we worship many deities, each representing different aspects of the divine. But in Buddhism, there is no creator god. How do you find meaning without them?" In Buddhism, Bhikkhu Ananda explained, deities are seen as symbolic representations of enlightened qualities. They are not worshipped as gods who control the universe, but as manifestations of our own true nature. For instance, Avalokiteshvara embodies compassion, and by meditating on him, we cultivate that same compassion within ourselves. The Buddha, too, is not a god but a teacher who showed us the path to enlightenment. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the hills, Arjun felt a deep sense of peace. He realized that while Hinduism and Buddhism approached the mysteries of life from different angles, both offered profound insights into the nature of existence. Before leaving, Arjun asked one final question, "Bhikkhu Ananda, which path should I follow? Hinduism, which speaks to my soul, or Buddhism, which resonates with my mind?" The monk looked at Arjun with compassion. "The path you choose is yours alone, Arjun. Both paths can lead to the truth, but the journey must be walked by you. Explore them both, and let your heart guide you. Remember, the truth is not in the labels of Hindu or Buddhist but in the understanding that brings peace to your soul." Arjun thanked Bhikkhu Ananda and made his way back to the village, his heart and mind buzzing with new thoughts and questions. He knew that his journey had only just begun, and that the search for truth would be a lifelong adventure. That night, as Arjun sat beneath the stars, he felt a deep connection to the universe around him. He realized that whether through the teachings of Hinduism or Buddhism, the ultimate goal was the same: to find peace, to understand the nature of reality, and to live a life of compassion and wisdom. And in that moment, Arjun knew he was exactly where he needed to be, on the path of the seeker, walking between two worlds, yet fully at home in both. Hinduism, the eternal tradition. Hinduism, often referred to as Sanatana Dharma or the eternal tradition, is not a monolithic religion but a complex, pluralistic tapestry of philosophies, rituals, and cultural practices. It doesn't have a single founder or a specific doctrine but is a synthesis of various beliefs and practices that have evolved over thousands of years. Core beliefs of Hinduism. 1. Dharma. Dharma is a central concept in Hinduism, often translated as duty, righteousness, or the moral order. It refers to the ethical responsibilities and duties each individual must follow to maintain harmony in the universe and in one's personal life. Dharma is unique to each individual, influenced by their age, caste, gender, and life stage. 2. Karma. The law of karma, or action and its consequences, is another foundational belief in Hinduism. Every action, thought, or word produces a corresponding result, shaping one's future experiences. Good deeds lead to positive outcomes, while bad deeds bring about suffering. This cyclical nature of cause and effect continues across lifetimes, influencing one's reincarnations. 3. Samsara and moksha. Like Buddhism, Hinduism recognizes the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth known as samsara. However, the ultimate goal in Hinduism is moksha, liberation from this cycle. Moksha is achieved through self-realization, understanding the true nature of the self, Atman, as being one with the ultimate reality, Brahman, which transcends the physical world. 4. Gods and deities. Hinduism is both polytheistic and monotheistic, depending on the perspective. It acknowledges a supreme, formless reality known as Brahman, which manifests in various forms, such as gods and goddesses like Vishnu, Shiva, Lakshmi, and Durga. These deities represent different aspects of the divine and cater to the diverse needs of devotees. 5. Yoga and meditation. Integral to Hindu practice are various forms of yoga, which are spiritual paths aimed at achieving union with the divine. Bhakti Yoga focuses on devotion, Karma Yoga on selfless action, Jnana Yoga on knowledge, and Raja Yoga on meditation. Meditation, in particular, is seen as a way to quiet the mind and connect with the divine presence within. Rituals and practices. Hindu rituals are diverse and very widely based on regional, cultural, and sectarian differences. Common practices include puja, worship, which can be performed at home or in temples, involving offerings of flowers, food, and incense to deities. Mantras, sacred chants, are recited to invoke the divine and purify the mind. Festivals like Diwali and Holi celebrate religious myths and symbolize the victory of light over darkness. Buddhism, the path to enlightenment. Buddhism, founded by Siddhartha Gautama, known as the Buddha, emerged in the 6th century BCE as a reformist movement within the broader context of Indian spirituality. The Buddha's teachings offered a new path to spiritual awakening, distinct from the Vedic traditions of his time. Core beliefs of Buddhism. 1. The Four Noble Truths. At the heart of Buddhist teachings are the Four Noble Truths, which diagnose the human condition and prescribe a path to liberation. O dukkha, life is inherently unsatisfactory and full of suffering. O samadaya, the cause of suffering is desire and attachment. O nirodha, suffering can be overcome by eliminating desire and attachment. O magga, the path to the cessation of suffering is the Eightfold Path, which includes right understanding, intention, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. 2. Anatta, no self. Unlike Hinduism, which posits the existence of an eternal soul, Atman, Buddhism teaches the concept of anatta, or non-self. According to this doctrine, there is no permanent, unchanging self or soul. Instead, what we perceive as the self is a collection of constantly changing physical and mental phenomena. 3. Karma and rebirth. Similar to Hinduism, Buddhism also believes in karma and rebirth. However, because Buddhism rejects the notion of a permanent soul, the process of rebirth is understood differently. The cycle of samsara continues until one achieves nirvana, liberation from suffering, and the cycle of rebirth. 4. Nirvana. Nirvana is the ultimate goal in Buddhism, representing the cessation of all desires, attachments, and delusions. It is a state of perfect peace and liberation, where the individual is free from the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Practices and paths. Buddhist practice is centered on meditation, ethical conduct, and wisdom. The practice of mindfulness and meditation is essential in cultivating insight into the nature of reality and overcoming the delusions that cause suffering. There are different paths or vehicles within Buddhism, each with its own practices and goals. Theravada, often called the Way of the Elders, this path focuses on individual liberation and the attainment of arhatship, becoming an enlightened being who has escaped the cycle of rebirth. Theravada is practiced predominantly in Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Myanmar. Mahayana, known as the Great Vehicle, Mahayana expands the focus from individual liberation to the liberation of all sentient beings. Practitioners of Mahayana strive to become bodhisattvas, enlightened beings who postpone their own nirvana to help others achieve enlightenment. Mahayana Buddhism is prevalent in East Asia, including China, Japan, and Korea. Vajrayana, also known as Tantric Buddhism, Vajrayana is a more esoteric and complex path that incorporates rituals, mantras, and visualizations. Vajrayana practitioners seek to achieve enlightenment within a single lifetime, utilizing the body's energy and the mind's power to transcend ordinary reality. This form of Buddhism is primarily practiced in Tibet, Nepal, and Bhutan. Key differences between Hinduism and Buddhism. While both Hinduism and Buddhism share common cultural roots and concepts like karma, dharma, and samsara, they differ fundamentally in their views on the self, the divine, and the path to liberation. 1. The concept of self. In Hinduism, the self, Atman, is eternal and identical with Brahman, the ultimate reality. The realization of this oneness leads to moksha, liberation from the cycle of rebirth. In Buddhism, the self is an illusion, anatta. There is no permanent soul, and the realization of this truth leads to nirvana. 2. The divine. Hinduism is polytheistic, with a rich pantheon of gods and goddesses, each representing different aspects of the divine. Devotion to these deities through rituals and prayers is central to Hindu practice. Buddhism, on the other hand, does not worship gods in the traditional sense. While there are deities in Buddhism, they are seen as symbolic representations of enlightened qualities, not as creators or destroyers of the universe. 3. Rituals and practices. Hinduism is ritualistic, with a strong emphasis on temple worship, festivals, and rites of passage. The performance of these rituals is believed to generate positive karma and bring one closer to the divine. Buddhism places a greater emphasis on meditation, mindfulness, and ethical conduct. Rituals exist but are often more symbolic and focused on cultivating inner qualities rather than appeasing deities. 4. Liberation. In Hinduism, liberation, moksha, is the realization of the self's unity with Brahman. It is a state of eternal bliss and freedom from the cycle of rebirth. In Buddhism, liberation, nirvana, is the extinguishing of desire, attachment, and ignorance. It is a state of peace and freedom from suffering and the cycle of rebirth. The intersection of Hinduism and Buddhism, shared practices and influences. Despite their differences, Hinduism and Buddhism have influenced each other throughout history, particularly in regions where they have coexisted. Certain practices and concepts are shared between the two, though they are often understood differently. Meditation. Both traditions emphasize the importance of meditation as a means of achieving spiritual insight and liberation. In Hinduism, meditation is often part of the practice of yoga, aimed at realizing the self's unity with the divine. In Buddhism, meditation is central to the Eightfold Path and is used to cultivate mindfulness, concentration, and insight into the nature of reality. Mantras and chanting. Both Hinduism and Buddhism use mantras, sacred sounds or phrases, during rituals and meditation. In Hinduism, mantras are used to invoke the divine and focus the mind during worship. In Buddhism, mantras are often associated with specific deities and are used to cultivate particular qualities like compassion or wisdom. Tantra. The practice of Tantra exists in both Hinduism and Buddhism, though it takes different forms. In Hindu Tantra, rituals and practices are aimed at awakening the Kundalini energy and achieving union with the divine. In Buddhist Tantra, Vajrayana, practices are more esoteric, involving visualizations, mantras, and rituals designed to transform the practitioner's mind and body into the enlightened state. Conclusion. A journey of understanding. Both Hinduism and Buddhism offer profound and complex systems of thought, each providing unique perspectives on the nature of existence, the self, and the path to liberation. While Hinduism presents a more theistic and ritualistic approach, focusing on the realization of the self's unity with the divine, Buddhism offers a more philosophical and introspective path, focusing on the elimination of suffering through the understanding of the true nature of reality. In exploring these traditions, we gain not only a deeper understanding of their teachings but also a broader perspective on the diverse ways in which humanity has sought to answer the fundamental questions of life. Whether you are drawn to the devotional practices of Hinduism or the meditative path of Buddhism, each tradition offers valuable insights and practices that can enrich your spiritual journey. If you found this discussion enlightening, be sure to check out our playlist for more in-depth explorations of spiritual and philosophical topics. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery.